Hello again, everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Sunday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 14th day of February 2021, Valentine's Day. I'm Dave Percy, a meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphics. Not a whole lot going on as far as warnings and watches. Well, in fact, nothing going on as far as warnings. There are no warnings or watches out. We've got wind chill advisory out for the western Arctic coast there. The yellow shaded area weighing right down to Point Hope, and that's out until noon Monday, and looking for wind chills to 50 degrees below zero until that time. And then for the northwest coast, the north side of the Seward Peninsula, Shishmaref area, and the Bering Strait coast to St. Lawrence Island, that's a winter weather advisory for blowing snow and maybe a little new snow, not too much expected additional accumulation, but winds gusting to 50 miles an hour in those areas will create lower visibilities, possibly less than a quarter mile at times, and blowing snow. And that's out through 3 p.m. Monday afternoon. And from there, as I mentioned, no other watches, warnings, or advisories. So moving on to the satellite imagery, you can see clouds there kind of increasing over the central and southern southeast coast, with actually some snow moving into the southern areas there. Ketchikan picking up possibly as much as 1 to 2 inches across the area down there, with light snow falling through the afternoon hours, and then cuts off not too much farther to the north there, but the clouds are gradually increasing. Snow expected to push a little farther north here this evening and overnight tonight. Otherwise, clouds moved in over the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet area to the western Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Valley, as you can see right up into Norton Sound there. And then a higher band there showing up a little whiter from Yukon Delta in across Kamishak Bay, Southern Cook Inlet there. That's got a little bit of moisture, but not much falling with it. And Kodiak picked up about 1/3 of an inch of precipitation with that band as it moved through. And you can see a fair amount of breaks there south of the Pribilofs, where St. George had 0.11 of an inch of precipitation in the last 12 hours, and Kodiak about 0.3 of an inch, and lighter amounts along the Alaska Peninsula there. So that front really weakening from what it was earlier, in a low pressure area still over the central Aleutians, gradually weakening as well. Otherwise, up along the Arctic coast, areas of clouds and flurries, not too bad there. Wind's not much of a factor at all, and then variable clouds over the interior with areas of clearing as well, right on down into Prince William Sound, the North Gulf Coast. Looks pretty good over Yakutat Way in the northern Panhandle, but less wind in Lynn Canal and Glacier Bay areas than what we've had. And for today, again, see some snow pushing into the southern southeast coast. Otherwise, a pretty nice day over much of interior Alaska with a fair amount of clearing, variable clouds around. But the precipitation area is mostly Kodiak Island, not quite reaching the Seward Peninsula or North Gulf Coast there yet. And northeast Bristol Bay dry, but the Alaska Peninsula seeing some moisture today of the light variety. Winds not as strong as they were yesterday, mostly, gusts possibly 30 to 40 miles an hour for the eastern Aleutians out of the south-southeast to the Alaska Peninsula as they blow around that 968 millibar low. Also pretty gusty on the west side of that low center, with colder air coming down across the far western Aleutians, with winds gusting to about 40 miles an hour out Amchitka westward to Shemya. Otherwise, the northern Bering Sea, not too bad. Variable clouds over the Bering Strait coast, and actually mostly clear there up along the western Arctic coast. And eastward, with all the flurries of that trough, mostly in the all off to the east, not even anything falling at Barter Island or Kaktovik. And for tonight, may change, may pick up a little bit of fog and flurry condition there. Winds will stay light, though, for the eastern Arctic coast. Look for moisture chance, snow and blowing snow there for the northwest coast, and then the gusty winds with the wind chill advisories for the western Beaufort Sea coast. Southwest interior continues to see an increase in clouds and moisture with an upward trend in temperatures. Mixed precipitation possibly getting into western Bristol Bay. And the Panhandle snow pushes northward, maybe reaching Juneau, maybe not, but stays fair. Not much change over the eastern interior. And for tomorrow, not much change over the eastern part of the state as well. Lose the flurries up over the Arctic coast and North Slope, with winds slowly diminishing there on the western Arctic coast, and the wind chill advisory ends. A band of light snow showers or snow, Yukon Delta up along the Nulato Hills to Nunivak Island, and stays unsettled and breezy out over the Aleutians and southern Bering Sea with that persistent low through Tuesday. And shower chances, Kodiak Island, increasing moisture there along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula, and southern Cook Inlet, chance of snow into the Kuskokwim Valley. And for Tuesday, next front pushes rain and snow mixed into the Alaska Peninsula, Aleutians, snow and blowing snow on the increase again, St. Lawrence Island and the southwest coast, with increasing moisture across the Panhandle now, possibly mixing with rain along the coastline, North Gulf Coast, same pattern. Lows for tonight, 10 of northern Panhandle to near 30 in the south. 25 below for the Copper River Basin, single numbers above zero, so sit in the valley to teens as high as upper 20s for the Homer area, Kodiak into the mid-30s. But still north of the Alaska Range, anywhere from 5 to 25 below in the Tanana Valley, and 25 to 35 below for the North Slope out to the Arctic coast, and below zero for St. Lawrence Island, but mid-30s for the Pribilos for your lows. And the highs tomorrow, mid-20s northern Panhandle, upper 30s along the central and south coasts, and lower 30s southern Kenai Peninsula, but in the teens from Anchorage up into the Susitna Valley, staying below zero, Copper River Basin, a little above zero there, 0 to 10 for your highs, Tanana Valley, but below zero north of there out to the Arctic coast, and upper 30s to near 40 for the Aleutians and the Bering Sea. And Tuesday morning lows, a little warmer, still below zero in the Copper River Basin, upper teens northern Panhandle, lower 30s south, teens and 20s south central Alaska, below zero north of the Alaska Range there to the Arctic coast, and lower to mid-30s for the Aleutians and Bering Sea. Highs Monday afternoon, upper 20s to upper 30s for the Panhandle, and in the 20s southern Alaska, below zero now from the Brooks Range to the Arctic coast, but above zero for the Tanana Valley.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to first line weather graphic for Monday morning, we've got IFR from the Brooks Range out across the North Slope, and then marginal VFR extending south of the mountains up there into the across the Yukon Flats, and actually right almost into the central interior there, almost down into the mountains north of Fairbanks, or the hills north of Fairbanks, and then a swath of VFR there from the Seward Peninsula to the Cape Lisburne area, southeastward, right into Cook Inlet and Prince William Sound, eastern, or the Copper River Basin there into the northern Panhandle, all VFR. IFR has slipped on up into the southern southeast coast with marginal VFR a little farther to the north. Marginal VFR, Kenai Peninsula on the south side, maybe Kachemak Bay, definitely Kamishak Bay, and IFR Kodiak Island across northeast Bristol Bay, Togiak Bay, and then expands there quite near out over the central Bering Sea. And for the afternoon outlook, that area IFR shifts into Yukon Delta coast and continues across Bristol Bay there, and also into the southern Kuskokwim Valley and up across north of Iliamna Lake there into the southern western Alaska Range area with marginal VFR up to possibly as far north as Rainy Pass, but staying VFR Susitna Valley, marginal VFR almost to the Talkeetna Mountains there. Having a tough time getting farther north, though. Copper River Basin and much of the eastern interior stays VFR. Then from the Brooks Range, you pick up the marginal VFR with the IFR in the North Slope, mostly the central and eastern North Slope and eastern Beaufort Sea coast. And just some lingering marginal VFR there over toward Hyder and Stewart, and the Panhandle becomes VFR once again. And zone of IFR there, just exiting Adak and making an arrival there for Unmak Island. And then for the Tuesday morning outlook, not too bad. The IFR mostly north of the Aleutians there, the exception being Kiska and Amchitka Islands. And then marginal to VFR from southwest Bristol Bay, Alaska Peninsula area, marginal VFR for the Fox Islands. VFR St. Lawrence Island, Seward Peninsula, up into the northwest coast there in the Noatak Valley. IFR and marginal VFR, Brooks Range on out to the Arctic coast with some areas of VFR thrown in. Eastern interior there, VFR till you get down to the southern Copper River Basin, and you pick up some IFR now. Matanuska Valley, most of the Susitna Valley, all of the Kenai Peninsula, Prince William Sound, North Gulf Coast, Cook Inlet, and that extends into the northern Panhandle now with marginal VFR on down to the south. IFR Kodiak Island, and not too bad out over the Aleutians. And then for the afternoon, area of IFR extends back down across Atka Island to about Nikolsky. Otherwise marginal for the Pribilofs to the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, western Alaska Peninsula. Then about Cold Bay on eastward, IFR Kodiak Island, IFR eastern slopes of the southern mountains, Alaska Range, Kuskokwim Mountains there. And then the Yukon Delta, IFR up to the Nulato Hills. Marginal VFR, some scattered areas of IFR in the central interior there. 40-mile country, though. Upper Tanana Valley stays VFR. Copper River Basin has some IFR now showing up there. And the Panhandle marginal VFR or IFR over toward the border, another band just off the coast. And for passes IFR, northern entrance of both Anatuvik and Adigan tomorrow, otherwise marginal. And for Lake Clark and Merrill, marginal VFR, and in the case of Lake Clark, possibly becoming IFR on the eastern entrance into the afternoon, rainy. VFR for the most part of the day, possibly becoming marginal, and that'd be on the eastern entrance late in the day. Right on the edge, windy VFR. Isabel stays VFR, Mentasta VFR, Antonita VFR, Portage marginal VFR, and Chilcoot White VFR. Freezing levels at the surface along the North Gulf Coast and Panhandle, north of the Pribilofs. Icing, just some elevated threats there along the Kenai Peninsula, Alaska Peninsula, and up into the southern Bering Sea, and maybe a little bit along the Yukon Delta coast in up the lower Yukon River Valley area. And the jet stream, upper level low dropping down along the western Arctic coast with the colder air and the wind chill advisories tonight into tomorrow. And then another couple of upper lows weak over the north of the Aleutians and into Bristol Bay, 9,000 feet, 40-knot winds around the low in the in the central Aleutians, and about 45 at 3,000 feet. Otherwise, we've got northeast winds now, or east-northeasterly coming off the northwest coast there, 50 to 55 knots. Down just clipping St. Lawrence Island, otherwise light over the interior. Turbulence, moderate chop, Cape Lisburne, Point Hope, and the western Brooks Range, Alaska Peninsula, and eastern Aleutians.
Here at the end of the Earth, it still feels like a place for raw exploration and adventure. It's vast in all directions and ground zero for some of the biggest questions we have about the climate. But when we decided to make a series about the frozen places on Earth, we knew there would be one hurdle we would need to jump over first. What is the cryosphere?
The what?
Ooh.
I have no idea.
While I'm aware of the cryosphere, I don't actually know what it is.
It has something to do with ice. All right, that's all I got.
How do you get people acquainted with the cryosphere when most of us don't even know what it is?
Hey, so here we are in Washington, D.C., standing on the roof of NASA headquarters. That's the Capitol building right behind me. And what headquarters does is kind of serve as the focal point to connect the dots.
That's Dr. Tom Wagner, NASA's cryospheric program scientist at headquarters. In short, Tom is responsible for making sure NASA knows what the current status of the cryosphere is.
The cryosphere is everything from the snow that falls by your house to the icy reaches of the Himalayas, to the big ice sheets of Antarctica all the way at the South Pole, and also the frozen ground of the Arctic, and even some of that frozen ground that's currently under the ocean.
If you had to break it down, you'd have a mix of sea ice, snow cover, permafrost, ice sheets, and glaciers.
Right now, our best predictions are that sea levels will rise anywhere from 1 to 3 feet within the next 100 years. 3 feet of sea level rise has the potential to displace about 100 million people, which is a lot of people that need to find new homes.
Our current reality places us at a near tipping point, and the cryosphere is playing a huge part in that delicate balance.
So one of the things people don't know about NASA is that we study the Earth, and we've been doing that since NASA's inception back in the 1950s. And we study the frozen part of the Earth in a variety of ways.
Missions like SNOWX, Airborne Snow Observatory, Oceans Melting Greenland, Operation Icebridge, Arctic Boreal Vulnerability Experiment, and countless other labs and individual researchers stand at the forefront of monitoring the cryosphere. But this year was a particularly big year.
3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Grace Follow-On, continuing the legacy of the Grace mission of tracking the movement of water across our planet.
2 state-of-the-art satellite missions are being launched in a single year as part of a major attempt to understand Earth's frozen places. Our scientists are answering hard questions, sharing stories from the field, and giving their best predictions for what we can expect of a warming world. We're taking you with us as we follow NASA explorers on their journey to the frozen ends of the Earth as they study our rapidly changing world from satellites, planes, and boots on the ground.
What we can do really well from orbit is we can tell when a surface of land is covered in snow. What's tricky is though, how thick is that snow? And it's even trickier how much water is in that snow.
What we think of snow depends a lot on where it falls. If you live in the eastern US, maybe it's fun. Or maybe it's just a pain.
But if you live in parts of the world where they depend on the water that's in the snow for a large fraction of their total water that they use for drinking, for agriculture, for industry, or for hydropower, the snow is a very important natural resource. For example, in the western part of the United States, 80 to 90% of their renewable water comes from snow.
Snow is one part of the cryosphere that many of us have actually encountered before, but it also plays a critical role in regulating the Earth's climate. Through decades of remote sensing, NASA has kept a close eye on the ebb and flow of snow cover.
We now have a 52-year record of snow cover in the Northern Hemisphere, and we can see changes in the extent of snow cover over the time period, particularly in the last few decades, where we can see that the snow cover has been retreating. It's been melting a lot earlier in the springtime.
The extent is relatively easy to do, and it has been done over the years. What's tricky is though, how thick is that snow? And it's even trickier how much water is in that snow.
That tricky part is known as the snow-water equivalent, or how much water would actually be in a layer of snow if it melted. NASA and its partners have taken to the air to help solve this elusive mystery. First, there's the Airborne Snow Observatory, or ASO, a small plane outfitted with a couple of instruments, one of which measures snow depth using LiDAR. LiDAR measures distance using light from lasers. Since 2014, ASO has flown over basins in California and Colorado, taking before and after looks at snow depth. Scientists subtract the snow-free summer data from the snow-on winter data to get an idea of the snow depth. There's no single way to measure all types of snow across the globe, and so NASA's other airborne campaign, SNOWX, is testing different combinations of sensors. This winter, SNOWX will test a new instrument, the Snow-Water Equivalent Synthetic Aperture Radar and Radiometer, or SWISAR.
SWISAR consists of 2 main components, one of them being the radar and the second one being the radiometer.
So with the radar providing the depth of the snow and the radiometer providing the density of the snow, we could put those two things together and get the snow water equivalent. Here in the chamber, we're going to measure different radiation patterns that are different frequencies and do some full system testing in this chamber. This chamber kind of enables us to isolate various types of radiation and interference. And in about a month, we're going to take the instrument, mount it on a Twin Otter in the Grand Mesa in Colorado, and we're going to fly it over the Grand Mesa and take various different measurements. This is what we call our engineering flight.
Making sure the sensors are calibrated is key in order to face the challenges nature will throw at them.
Half of the area that gets covered by snow every winter contains trees and forest. And the trees make it difficult for the sensors to see the snow that's underneath the trees, so it makes it difficult for us to measure how much snow there is. After the snow's had a chance to sit on the ground for a while, it gets denser and denser and denser over time, and it changes. Which is another reason why snow is very challenging to remotely sense. It doesn't stay the same. It's constantly changing. One of the things that we often do in the field is go dig what we call a snow pit. We literally dig a pit in the snow so we can see all the different layers. The layering is very important.
All this digging is part of ground truthing SnowX, a way of matching up what the airborne instruments see and what is actually sitting on the surface. The ultimate goal of SnowX is to figure out what the best combination of instruments would be for a future satellite mission in order to get a global picture of snow.
We need to know how much snow is in a snowpack, because if we have too much snow and the snow melts too fast, then you can get flooding. And if you don't have enough snow, or if the snow melts too early, that can lead to a longer wildfire season, a more intense drought, and we need to know these things for water resource planning.
After we had a record that was about 15, 20 years long, we started noticing that the extent of the ice in the Arctic was getting smaller over time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis showing the thinner ice area along the Yukon Delta coast up to about Hooper Bay there, kind of expanding a little bit from what it was yesterday. Also south of St. Lawrence Island and around Nunivak Island. It looks like the heavier ice not so widespread there from Cape Newinam across Togiak Bay into Bristol Bay. And still a fair amount of ice now, still south of the Forelands and Cook Inlet. And coastal water forecasts for Prince of Wales Island coast, west winds 20 knots, 13-foot seas. Otherwise, for the central and north coast of the Panhandle, easterlies 10 to 15 knots, seas 12 to 13 feet. Central southern inside waters, look for a northwest breeze of 15 knots, 3-foot seas. Lynn Canal north at 20 with seas at 4 feet. And for Tuesday, swinging around to the south at 15 for Lynn Canal, southeast 15 for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, south 15 with 4-foot seas. And for the south coast of the Panhandle, southwest winds 15 to 20 knots with 12-foot seas. And the north coast, southerlies at 15, seas running 10 to 11 feet. Cook Inlet, north of the Forelands, northeast of 15, small craft advisories, southern Cook Inlet into Kemishak Bay. For northeast winds 25 knots, seas running 4 to 6 feet, southeast to 20 to 10-foot seas for the Barren Islands, and easterlies for the North Gulf Coast 15 to 20 knots, and Prince William Sound, winds will be fairly light out of the east at 10. And they'll pick up a little bit, but not too bad, not too much on Tuesday. East winds 15 knots for Prince William Sound. Otherwise, small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast, south to southeast winds 25 knots, seas just under 10 feet. Small craft advisories also for the Barren Islands, southeast at 25 with 11-foot seas. Kemishak Bay, east winds 25 knots, seas running at about 5 feet. Cook Inlet, pretty uniform breeze there, or wind, I guess. Northerlies at 20 with seas south of Forelands, ice-free areas there at 5 feet. And for Kodiak Island, southwest breeze on the east side of 15, and for Shelikof Strait, northeast at 15. Otherwise, Sitkanack to Castle Cape, south winds 20 knots, small craft advisories for the Alaska Peninsula, south to southeast 30 knots, and Bristol Bay looking at a southeast wind at 15 for tomorrow. That'll pick up to small craft advisories for Bristol Bay on Tuesday. Out of the southeast, 25 knots, seas in ice-free areas there, 5 feet. And then for the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, southwest or southeast winds 20 knots, And then from Cape Sarachev all the way up to Sitkinak, south winds 30 knots, east 12 to 14 feet. East side Kodiak Island, south at 20, east 15, Shelikof Strait. On Alaska Island, south to southeast 30 35 knots tomorrow. And Unmak Island, south to southwest 25 to 30. Adak north to northwest 25. And then from Amchitka all the way out to Shimia, winds will be out of the north at 30 knots with 15 to 20 foot seas. Bringing up to Tuesday, and from Shimia to Kiska, northwest 20 knots, Amchitka Island, small craft advisories with northwest at 30. Gale warnings for the Adak area, central Aleutians for northwest winds 35 knots. Small craft advisories for the eastern Aleutians for, in the case of Unmak Island, westerlies at 25 to 30, and for Unalaska Island, south to southeast at 25. And for the southwest coast there, south of Nunivak Island, east at 20, Yukon Delta coast, northeast at 20. St. Lawrence Island, north 30. Small craft advisories for the St. Matthew Island and the Pribilofs. For east winds at 30 knots for the Pribilofs and 25 knots for St. Matthew Island. Outlook for Tuesday, north winds 30 knots. Brisk wind advisories there for St. Lawrence Island, Yukon Delta coast. And east at 20 for the Kuskokwim Delta coastline. North 30 for St. Matthew Island. And for the Pribilofs, those winds coming down to 15 knots from the east. And variable winds 10 knots for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast, mainly north at 10 for the central coast, northeast 15 on the west side, and then from Cape Beaufort to Wales, north to northeast winds, brisk wind advisories at 30 knots. And they'll go down to about 25 knots there from Wales up to Cape Beaufort from the north, and then 15 knots for the western Arctic coast. Real light winds on the east side there, 5 to 10 knots out of the west. For tonight, snow and blowing snow, wind chill advisory for the western Arctic coast, winter weather advisory there for the northwest coast. For the blowing snow, gusting 50 miles an hour. Otherwise, kind of a wide increasing moisture over the southwest interior there, as you can see, pushing into southern Cook Inlet and the Kenai Peninsula, and snow pushing northward across the Panhandle tonight, but maybe not reaching Juneau. And for tomorrow, look for that dries out over the Panhandle. Eastern, northern interior stay dry. Chance of snow southwest part of the state. Mixed precipitation, Kodiak to the southern Kenai Peninsula. And that low parked out in the Aleutians keeps it unsettled and breezy out there. And that weakens, but pretty much holds in place there through Tuesday. And more snow chances in the interior.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.